I don't know why, but I always seem to be the target of jealousy. Back when I worked at a foreign company, many of my coworkers, especially the women, didn't like me. They often gathered in small groups, whispering, gossiping, and talking badly about me behind my back. When they spoke to me directly, their tone was often passive-aggressive, sometimes even openly hostile. I didn't do anything to provoke them. In fact, I didn't understand why they disliked me so much. I was quiet, kind, and never caused trouble, but somehow I became the center of their resentment. Every day, I felt the pressure building, the cold glances, the exclusion, the subtle bullying. It affected me deeply. I didn't fight back. I got too shy, too soft-spoken, but their words, their judgment, their rejection, it hurt. Looking back, I often wonder if I had known about Stoic philosophy back then. Maybe I would have handled it differently. Maybe I would have stayed calm. Maybe I wouldn't have taken their cruelty so personally. Maybe I would have seen it for what it was, a reflection of their own insecurity, not my worth. That's why I want to share this philosophy with you, because I know many of you have been through something similar, and I want you to know there is a way to stay strong and at peace, no matter how others treat you. That memory still stirs something deep inside me, but it was through those painful experiences that I began to understand the quiet strength of inner peace and the timeless wisdom of Stoic philosophy. If I had known back then that I didn't need to react, didn't need to explain, didn't have to let other people's words invade my mind, maybe I could have stayed calm. Maybe I could have protected my peace. And now I want to invite you to walk that same path, the path of emotional self-mastery, quiet strength, the power to face toxic people without losing yourself. The Stoic teachings aren't just abstract ideas, they are a shield for the soul. And this video is the first shield I offer you.
It starts small. A snide comment at work, a passive-aggressive remark from a family member, that friend who always jokes just a little too close to the bone. At first, you brush it off. But slowly, you feel it, that familiar tension rising in your chest, the urge to clap back, to defend yourself, to prove that you're not someone to mess with. And that's exactly what they want. Because some people don't seek peace, they seek reactions. They want to pull you into their emotional storm so they don't have to sit in it alone. Have you ever noticed how much energy people spend testing others? Poking, prodding, provoking, trying to see what makes you tick, trying to see if they can break your calm just a little. And the moment you react, they win, not because you're weak, but because you've handed over your inner world, your control to them. The Stoics had a name for this, being ruled by externals, and to them, it was the first sign of spiritual immaturity. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Marcus Aurelius. Imagine that. Someone insults you, and you feel nothing. Not because you've become numb, but because you've trained your mind to rise above it, to no longer grant every annoyance the power to enter your peace. That's not detachment. That's mastery. But let's be honest, that's not where most of us begin. I remember a time in my life when everyone seemed to be testing me. At work, at home, even among friends, it felt like I was walking through a battlefield of egos, people interrupting me just to prove a point, smirks when I tried to share something meaningful, backhanded compliments that stung more than open criticism, and I wasn't calm. I snapped. I tried to clear things up and set the record straight. What did it get me? More testing. Because now they knew I could be rattled. That's when I discovered something in Epictetus that changed everything. When someone irritates you, Know that it is your own opinion which is irritating you. Discourses. Epictetus had hit me like a silent truth I had avoided for too long. It wasn't the people who were causing the storm inside me. It was me, handing over my emotions like currency, just to gain their approval or win an argument I didn't need to be in. So the real question becomes, can you remain calm? Not because you're pretending, but because you're no longer triggered. Can you walk through the fire without reaching for the water bucket every time someone lights a spark? This video is about that. About the Stoic strategy to stay calm when everyone consciously or unconsciously is testing you. It's not about being passive, it's about being unshakable. It's about developing what the Stoics called mental fortitude, that inner resilience that no insult, no provocation, no judgment can touch. Because in a world full of noise, chaos, and provokers, calm is not a default, it's a discipline. Begin. What truly separates someone who stays calm from someone who constantly loses their temper? It's not their environment. It's not luck. It's one small thing, a tiny space between stimulus and response. To the Stoics, that space is where your power lives. Someone says something disrespectful. If you react instantly, you're acting out of impulse. You're letting your nervous system run the show. But if you pause even for 2 seconds, you reclaim a choice. To respond with strength, not emotion. No one can harm you unless you allow it in your own mind. Epictetus, imagine you're standing in a room. Someone walks by and throws an insult your way. Now you have 2 options. You pick it up, you hold it, analyze it, get angry over it, and throw something worse back. Or you let it fall. You don't pick it up. You don't give it the power to disturb your peace. Create the space. That's the first Stoic strategy when you're being tested. They don't fight fire with fire. They simply don't play the emotional game others try to lure them into. And the beautiful thing is, this can be trained at practical exercise. Pause for 2 seconds next time someone says something that triggers you. Don't respond immediately. Instead, ask yourself silently, does this truly affect my worth? Can I observe this emotion without becoming it? Am I reacting or responding? Those 2 seconds could save you from 2 hours of stress, 2 days of resentment, or even 2 years of regret over something said in the heat of the moment. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, was insulted, betrayed, and mocked within his own court. Yet he didn't strike back in haste. In Meditations, he recorded quiet conversations with himself, as if to buy time, to think, to pause before judgment. When others do wrong, it is out of ignorance. To blame them serves no purpose. Our task is not to become like them. Marcus Aurelius. And today, this wisdom is even more necessary. We live in an age of instant reactions. Social media trains us to clap back, to cancel, to call out. To be slow is to be weak. To be silent is to surrender. But the Stoics knew something else. Silence, when chosen, is an invisible victory, because true strength isn't winning a loud argument. It's winning over yourself. So what do you choose? To react from impulse, or to respond from depth? Do you choose reflex or mastery? The moment you create space between what they say and how you respond, you're no longer controlled. You've become your own master. The world will test you. Not once, not twice, but constantly. People will misunderstand you. They will question your silence. They will interpret your calm as coldness or weakness. And that's when most people break, because they've built their peace on things they cannot control. Other people's approval, external praise, being understood, being liked. But the Stoics did something different. They built a citadel not of stone or steel, but of spirit. Marcus Aurelius called it the inner citadel, a fortress within, untouched by the chaos of the world. A man's greatness lies in the strength of his inner fortress, that place within him where nothing external can enter without permission. Meditations. Imagine that. A place in you that no insult can reach, no criticism can shatter, no manipulation can twist. That's not fantasy. That's Stoicism. So, how do you build it? It doesn't happen in comfort. You build it each time you're tested and choose not to collapse. Every time you stay calm instead of snapping back. Every time you walk away instead of fueling the fire. Every time you breathe deeply and let the storm pass through you without moving your center. You are laying another brick in your inner citadel. I once heard someone say, your nervous system tells the truth about your freedom. If the smallest slight rattles you, if every raised eyebrow steals your peace, you're not free. You're on a leash. and the world is holding the other end. But when you can remain grounded while the world throws darts, not because you're numb, but because you've trained for this, then you've arrived. You're no longer fragile. You've become fortified. Building this kind of inner fortitude doesn't require shouting affirmations or pretending nothing hurts. It requires facing your triggers with honesty and learning not to run from them. Someone questions your worth. You remind yourself, their opinion is not a mirror. Someone pushes your boundaries. You don't shout, you hold the line, firmly and quietly. Someone gossips about you. You resist the urge to clear your name because the truth doesn't beg to be understood. The Stoics weren't cold. They simply didn't need everyone to like them. They had something stronger, self-respect, born from self-mastery. They knew that the greatest peace doesn't come from fixing the world. It comes from fortifying yourself so the world can't shake you. So ask yourself, where do I retreat when the world turns loud? What am I building inside me? A fortress, or a fragile ego waiting to be defended? Because if you build that citadel brick by brick, through daily discipline, honest reflection, and calm under pressure, you'll discover something powerful. Nothing outside you can break what you've built within. Calm isn't a trait, it's a training. No one is born with an unshakable mind. Even the Stoics weren't. They practiced it every single day, just like a warrior trains his body. You must train your nervous system because here's the truth. The world isn't going to stop testing you, but you can stop reacting blindly. 1. Start your day with stillness. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor burdened by war and politics, began each morning reminding himself, you will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly, but they are like this because they don't know the difference between good and evil. Why would a man with armies at his command write this? Because he knew the battle started inward, before the world even spoke a word. You don't need an hour of silence. You need intentional stillness, even just 5 minutes. Sit, breathe, remind yourself. Today, I will not be shaken by things I cannot control. 2. Use the pause. Respond. Don't react. The Stoics had a secret weapon, and it wasn't clever arguments or emotional detachment. It was the pause. Between stimulus and response. There is a moment. Someone insults you. Pause. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Pause. Your ego flares up. Pause. In that pause, you regain your power. You ask, is this worth my peace? Will this matter tomorrow? Am I reacting or responding with wisdom? That's not weakness. That's discipline. 3. Expose yourself to minor discomfort on purpose. Seneca practiced discomfort regularly. He fasted, wore simple clothes, and embraced temporary hardships. Why? So that when hardship arrives, I will not be unprepared. You don't have to live like a monk, but you can choose small challenges daily. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Skip a meal occasionally. Say no to the urge to check your phone each time you do. You teach your body, I am not controlled by comfort. I choose my response. And each of those choices, though small, is another muscle of your calm being trained. 4. Rehearse misfortune in your mind. The Stoics called this practice premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They imagined things going wrong, not to become pessimists, but to prepare themselves emotionally, so nothing caught them off guard. You can do this before a meeting, before seeing a difficult person, or before a challenging day. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? How would I respond if they misunderstood me again? What if I failed, and it was okay? When you rehearse adversity mentally, you meet it calmly when it actually arrives. 5. Keep a daily reflection journal before you sleep. Ask, when did I lose my calm today? What triggered me, and why? Next time, how can I respond differently? Marcus Aurelius did this nightly in his meditations, not for others to read, but to see himself clearly. Self-awareness is the foundation of self-mastery, because you cannot fix what you do not observe. We often think that calm belongs to the wise, the enlightened, the far removed, but the truth is calm is built in the trenches. In the everyday moments. When someone speaks over you, and you choose not to raise your voice, when plans fall apart, and you smile anyway, when people judge you, and you keep walking, untouched, that's where Stoic calm is forged, not in temples, not in theories, but in tension. You can't control when the storm hits, but you can control who you are when it does, and each time you stay grounded. Just 1 second longer than before, you've already won. You're no longer reacting, you're choosing, and that's the birth of power. Here's the truth few are willing to admit. Most of the chaos in our lives comes not from what people do to us, but from how much our ego wants to react. Someone insults you. Your ego burns with the desire to strike back, to prove them wrong, to reclaim power. But the Stoic doesn't play that game, because what is the ego, really? It's that little voice inside whispering, you can't let them get away with that. It feeds on recognition, on being right, on dominance. But the Stoic, he has trained his mind to recognize the voice of the ego as a trickster, a manipulator that pretends to protect us but actually leads us into weakness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that's exactly what we need when people try to push us. When the boss gives you criticism that feels unfair, when your partner says something that stings, when your friend forgets your boundaries, your ego wants to explode. But your training, your Stoic discipline kicks in. And instead of reacting, you observe, you breathe. You don't seek to win the argument. You seek to win yourself. You ask, is this situation really threatening me, or just threatening my pride? Because once you can separate your identity from your emotions, you become unshakable. People can provoke you, but they can't control you. They can push your buttons, but you've removed the wiring. This is the Stoic counter move to the test of ego. Detachment without indifference. You don't become cold, you become clear. You don't become passive, you become powerful, because you're no longer a slave to reactivity. In the storm of life, when others are swept away by the wind of their emotions, you remain rooted like a mountain, silent, steady, and impossible to move. Most people think power is loud. They think it's in the raised voice, the cutting words, the dramatic exit. But the Stoics knew a different kind of power, one that doesn't need noise, attention, or domination. The kind of power that sits quietly in a room while others lose their minds. It's called calm. True calm isn't passive. It's not weakness. It's not letting people walk all over you. It's choosing deliberately not to be swept away by every storm that passes through your life. Think about this. When a room is filled with tension and someone walks in who is utterly composed, everyone feels it. The energy shifts. Words needed. That's real presence. That's influence without force. And how do you build that kind of calm? You train your nervous system like a warrior trains their sword. You become familiar with discomfort. You breathe when your chest tightens. You pause when your mind wants to lash out. You choose silence when the ego wants noise. Because every moment of restraint is a moment of strength. Marcus Aurelius said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That's the Stoic advantage. You don't try to control others, you master yourself. When everyone is testing you, your boundaries, your patience, your peace, they're actually offering you a rare opportunity to become unshakable. To train in the fire of frustration, to face the storm and still remain the sky. Remember, the loudest person in the room is often the most insecure. The calmest one, usually the most dangerous, because they've trained themselves to respond only when it matters. They don't fight every battle, they pick the right ones. And often, the greatest power move is to simply walk away without saying a word. Not because you're weak, but because your inner stillness is worth more than any temporary victory. You don't need the world to be calm for you to be calm. You don't need people to be respectful, kind, or understanding for you to remain centered. Because real peace, the kind that endures, is not situational. It's a responsibility. Your responsibility. You don't get to outsource it. You don't get to say I'd be calm if they weren't so toxic, or I wouldn't have snapped if they hadn't provoked me. No, that's not Stoicism. That's victimhood in disguise. The Stoics teach that your inner state belongs to you, not to the moods of others. And the more you hand that power over, the more chaotic your life becomes. So what do you do when someone tries to stir the storm? You go inward. You return to your breath. You ground yourself in what you can control. Maybe it's your posture. Maybe it's the tone of your voice. Maybe it's the delay between the trigger and your reply. Even a single pause, just a breath, can make all the difference. Because in that space, you reclaim authority over your nervous system. That's not weakness. That's discipline. It's saying, I don't care how loud the world gets. I'm not giving up my peace. And here's something the Stoics would whisper into your ear when things get tough. No one can take your peace from you, but you can give it away. Don't. Every time you let someone drag you into their chaos, you've traded power for pride. Every time you must prove you're right, you've forgotten what matters most. Peace is more valuable than being right. Peace is more powerful than being loud. Peace is what allows you to live undisturbed in a disturbed world. And that, my friend, is a rare and unshakable freedom. You will walk through fire. There will be days when people misunderstand you, accuse you, dismiss you. There will be moments when your silence is mocked, your patience is tested, and your restraint is seen as weakness. Let them think what they want, because here's the truth most people miss. The calmest person in the room controls. The room, not the loudest, not the angriest, not the most intimidating but the one who can hold his ground without shaking. The one who can breathe steadily while others are gasping. The one who can see clearly while everyone else is blinded by emotion. That's power. That's Stoic power, and no one can fake it. You can't pretend to be calm, you have to be calm, because the world can smell pretense, but true stillness, it changes the temperature of a room, and you only get there by going through the hard training, sitting with discomfort without trying to escape it, letting others have the last word. When your ego is begging to speak, choosing clarity over control, and meaning over pride. You want to be unshakable? You want to walk through storms and not be moved? Then don't just study philosophy. Live it. Live it in your daily life. In traffic, in meetings, in arguments, in heartbreak, in moments when everything in you wants to explode, but you choose to breathe. Every one of those choices builds your inner fortress, and eventually the fire around. You won't matter because you've found the calm within the fire. Most people don't break because of massive tragedies. They break because of accumulated noise. Small insults, unmet expectations, passive-aggressive comments, a rude glance, an email that feels like a slap, a conversation that reopens old wounds. It's not the earthquake that destroys the foundation. It's the constant dripping of water that erodes the stone. That's why Stoics train daily, not for one grand battle, but for the thousands of tiny ones that come unannounced. Marcus Aurelius didn't just sit on a throne and write about calm. He was surrounded by betrayal, sickness, war, and personal loss. But he never let the world define the temperature of his soul. He chose his response, moment by moment. That's what you're being asked to do. When someone provokes you, they are not just testing your patience. They are revealing your level of preparation. You either react or respond. You either explode or observe. You either give away your power or you keep it. And here's the secret no one tells you. Every time you stay calm in the face of pressure, you build inner wealth, not the kind of wealth you can spend, but the kind that protects you from being emotionally bankrupt when life throws. The next storm.com is not something you wait for. It's not a mood that randomly arrives on a good day. It's a discipline you build when everything inside you wants to do the opposite. It takes strength to pause, to breathe, to not reply immediately, to not prove them wrong, to not show them how much they hurt you. Weakness shouts, ego reacts, but strength is quiet. Strength watches and waits. There's an old Stoic idea that says, if it's not under your control, then it's not your concern. Simple, but revolutionary. What they say about you, not under your control. What mood they bring into the room, not under your control. How they treat you when they're drowning in their own bitterness. Also, not under your control, but how you hold your center, how you master your breath, how you guard your inner peace like a sacred temple. That is your responsibility. That is your Stoic path. Because staying calm doesn't mean you're numb. It means you've stopped outsourcing your emotions to people who haven't earned that power. There is a space, a small one, between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. That space is where all your power lives. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the horrors of Nazi concentration camps, once wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." The Stoics knew this space well. They trained for it every day, in silence, in hardship, in the face of insults, betrayals, mockery, injustice, because life wasn't meant to be fair, but your reactions, they were always meant to be yours. This space between action and reaction is where the Stoic warrior lives. He doesn't lash out at every word. He doesn't tremble at every threat. He doesn't shatter at every loss. Instead, he stands firm, unmoved, not because the world is kind, but because his mind is trained. Calmness is not given. It's built, brick by brick, moment by moment, in that sacred pause where reaction used to live. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, ask yourself, do I fill this space with fire, or do I fill it with silence? There's something strange about a truly calm person. When they walk into a chaotic room, people lower their voices. When they listen instead of react, others start listening to. When they choose not to fight, the fight often ends before it begins. Why? Because calmness is contagious. It disarms ego. It dissolves tension. It speaks louder than yelling ever could. The Stoics didn't just aim to avoid conflict. They aimed to transform it, not with force, but with presence. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, held unimaginable power. And yet, he wrote more about patience and restraint than about command and control. He knew, true power is not about domination, it's about direction. And that direction starts within. When you're calm, you become a mirror. People see their own chaos reflected, and sometimes, they fall silent. Not because you silenced them, but because your stillness revealed the noise. They carried. The Stoic doesn't need to win arguments. He doesn't need to prove his worth. He wins by not playing the game at all. And ironically, that's when everything starts to change. What most people don't realize is that staying calm doesn't mean you don't feel anger, or hurt, or frustration. It means you've trained yourself not to let those emotions own you. You recognize the fire rising, but you don't throw fuel on it. You let it burn out in silence. This is the art of detachment. One of the most misunderstood aspects of Stoicism. Detachment doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging to outcomes, to people's opinions, to your own need to be seen as right. When someone insults you, you don't flinch, because your peace doesn't live in their words. When life throws delays and setbacks, you don't spiral, because your rhythm isn't dictated by circumstances. This kind of inner freedom is invisible to most, but to those who have it, it's everything. The Stoic doesn't react for show. He doesn't seek applause. He moves according to principle, not provocation. And because of that, he's untouchable in every heated moment. You are presented with a simple but powerful question. Will I choose calm, or will I surrender control? Most people don't even realize there's a choice. They go straight to reaction, yelling, defending, proving, panicking, but the Stoic pauses. Not because he's weak, but because he sees what's at stake, his clarity, his direction, his dignity. This moment, it's not about the insult. It's about what kind of person you're becoming in response. Are you someone who flares up when tested, or someone who holds the line? That line, that invisible boundary, is what separates the ordinary from the powerful. Your calm is not a natural gift. It's not about having an easy life or avoiding conflict. It's a skill, a choice, a commitment. And every time you choose to stay grounded, even when the world pulls at you, you strengthen a muscle that most people don't even know exists. So, the next time you're tested, don't say, they made me angry. Say, I saw the storm, and I chose to remain the sky. There is something quietly powerful about a person who refuses to be pulled into chaos. You've seen it before, a room filled with noise, tension, accusation, and yet one person stays still, unmoved, unshaken. It doesn't mean they're suppressing emotions. It means they've mastered them. You see, reacting is easy. It's primal, but silence, stillness, a composed face in the face of provocation. That's higher order. It's saying, I don't need to respond to every attack. I don't need to correct every lie. I don't need to be understood by everyone, because when you don't react, you gain something much more valuable. Authority over your own mind, and that is real power. This is why the Stoics trained themselves in discipline, not to become cold or emotionless, but so that they could rise above the noise and live on their own terms, not driven by ego, not dictated by provocation, but led by reason, wisdom, and an inner compass that doesn't shake with every storm. Don't need to win every argument. You don't even need to speak. Sometimes the strongest move is to let the fire burn out on its own while you remain untouched. Here's something most people don't realize. When someone tries to provoke you, they're not just looking for attention. They're looking for control. Control over your emotions, control over your energy, control over the tone of the room, because if they can get a rise out of you, they win. Not because they're right, but because they've hijacked your peace. But here's the Stoic secret. What you don't feed dies. When someone lashes out at you and you stay calm, you're not being passive. You're being deliberate, choosing not to give them what they want, your emotional reaction. Because the moment you give them that, you hand over your power. You let them dictate how you feel. And for the Stoic, That is unacceptable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to trouble yourself." That's not apathy. That's wisdom. Not every opinion deserves your reply. Not every insult deserves your anger. Not every drama deserves your entrance. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with your peace intact. Have you ever noticed when you're angry your vision narrows? Your focus locks onto one thing: the threat, the insult, the emotion. You stop seeing clearly. You stop listening deeply. And in that state, you're no longer responding. You're just reacting. But a calm mind sees everything. It sees not only what was said, but why it was said. It sees the pain behind the cruelty, the insecurity behind the arrogance, the desperation behind the manipulation. And once you see clearly, you no longer feel the need to fight back. You understand, you observe, you choose not to become what they are. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." So when someone tries to test you, that's your moment. That's your arena. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. Right in your discipline, right in your clarity, right in your control, because in chaos, the calm one isn't weak. The calm one is in command. Here's a truth many never learn. You don't have to absorb someone's energy to respond to their behavior. Most people act like emotional sponges. Someone throws anger at them, they soak it up. Someone dumps anxiety, they carry it home. Someone mocks them, they wear it like a scar. But Stoicism teaches us something radical. You can observe everything and carry nothing. Let them project their chaos. Let them shout, sulk, manipulate. You don't have to internalize it. You are not their emotional storage unit. You are the mountain. Storms may rage around you, but they do not move you. So how do you respond without absorbing? You pause. You breathe. You create space between their stimulus and your action. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them, and it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now." That's it. The power isn't in silencing the world. It's in quieting your judgment of it. When you stop absorbing, you stop overthinking. When you stop overthinking, you regain power. And when you're powerful, you don't react. You respond deliberately, intelligently, and only when needed, because your peace is worth more than proving a point. There's a certain kind of power that doesn't come from fighting back, but from letting go. Detachment is not coldness. It's not indifference. It's clarity. It's standing in the storm and realizing this doesn't belong to me. Their anger, not yours. Their insecurity, not yours. Their chaos, still not yours. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about your inner world than their outer noise. It's the opposite of entanglement. You stop arguing with people who only want to misunderstand you. You stop proving yourself to those committed to seeing you wrong. Epictetus said, "When someone provokes you, realize that it is your own opinion which provokes you." That insight changes everything. Because if it's your opinion that creates disturbance, then you can reclaim peace, not by changing them, but by changing how tightly you hold on. So what does this look like in real life? You stop engaging in unnecessary drama. You stop replying to subtle jabs. You stop justifying your choices to people who haven't earned your vulnerability. And instead of being drained by every conflict, you start walking away with your energy still intact. You begin to realize that the most powerful person in the room is not the loudest, not the most reactive, but the one who's anchored, untouched, unmoved, still. Have you ever noticed how silence can be louder than shouting? When someone tries to bait you into reacting, and you just pause, not because you're afraid, but because you see through it, that pause, it's not weakness, it's strategy. It's the moment between impulse and action, where your power lives. Marcus Aurelius mastered that pause. In the Meditations, he reminded himself constantly, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. So when someone disrespects you, you don't instantly react. You observe. You breathe. You let their energy pass through you, like wind through open hands. Because here's the truth. Most situations don't require a response. They require restraint. You're not here to win arguments. You're here to win your peace. And the more you practice that sacred pause, the more you begin to see people clearly. You see that their attack isn't personal, it's projection. You see that their sarcasm isn't clever, it's a mask. You see that their loudness isn't strength. It's insecurity dressed up in volume. And when you see clearly, you stop engaging blindly. You don't shrink. You don't explode. You just pause. And in that pause, you choose a wiser response. Sometimes that means saying nothing. Sometimes it means walking away. Sometimes it means holding your head high and letting your calm do the talking. But let me share a story, a true one. Though the name is changed. There was a young man named Elias at his first job. He was constantly challenged by a supervisor who seemed to take pleasure in provoking him. Snide remarks, public corrections, impossible deadlines, everything calculated to break his spirit. For months, Elias reacted with frustration. He defended himself. He vented to coworkers. He even considered quitting then. One evening after stumbling upon Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, a simple line changed him. If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. It is the truth I am after, not the ego of being right. That night, Elias made a vow not to win arguments, not to set the record straight, but to become unshakable. Not cold or passive, but deeply, powerfully calm. The next time his supervisor raised his voice, Elias didn't flinch. He listened. He nodded. He responded in 10 words or less. He offered solutions without emotion, and when criticized unfairly, he let it pass without feeding the fire. A month later, that same supervisor, seemingly defeated by Elias's stillness, stopped the provocations altogether. Why? Because calmness disarms conflict. Silence rewires dynamics. Your grounded presence becomes the loudest message in the room. Stoicism teaches us this. When you stop reacting, you start transforming. Not just yourself, but the entire atmosphere. Around you, you may not have control over the people who try to test your patience, but you always have control over what kind of person you become in response to them. And here's the secret they never teach. You in school, you don't need to win every battle. You only need to win yourself. Let them raise their voice. Let them misinterpret your stillness. Let them assume your silence is weakness. You're not there to meet their chaos with more chaos. You're there to master the inner war, so the outer noise no longer matters. Something strange begins to happen when you practice silence. You start to see people for who they truly are, while they still have no idea who you've become. The calmer you remain, the more others reveal the cracks in their own character. An angry person will erupt at your silence. An insecure one will try harder to provoke. And those who thrive on control, they'll panic, because you're no longer playing by their rules. Think about it. Have you ever dealt with someone who didn't react the way you expected? Did it make you feel uneasy, unsure of your position? That's the silent power of reaction. It doesn't shout. It doesn't defend, but it shifts the balance of power quietly by disrupting the predictable patterns others rely on. Picture walking into a noisy room. Everyone's talking over each other, fighting to be heard, and there's one person calm, quiet, simply observing. They haven't said a word, and yet, people notice. Because power doesn't always make noise. Sometimes, it just watches. That person could be you if you choose not to react. You don't have to control others. You just have to refuse to be pulled into their chaos. That's what the ancient Stoics understood so well. They weren't afraid of insults, or injustice, or even death. Because they knew, you don't change the world by yelling at it. You change the world by not letting it change you. There's a moment, a brief, almost invisible pause between what happens, and how you choose to respond. Most people miss it. They feel attacked, and they attack back. They feel hurt, and they lash out. No space, no thought, just reaction. But you're learning to live inside that space. That space is where freedom lives. That's where your power is not in controlling the world, but in not letting the world control you. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camp, said it best. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Let that sink in. Imagine someone insults you in front of a crowd. The old version of you might have snapped, tried to prove a point, escalated the drama. But now, you pause, you breathe, and you smile not because you're weak, but because you know something they don't. They're still a prisoner of their emotions. You're not. That pause, the space between stimulus and response, is what separates the wise from the impulsive, the calm from the chaotic, the leader from the follower. It's not about never feeling anger. It's about not becoming anger. because when you react, they control you. But when you choose to respond or not respond at all, you stay rooted in your own integrity, not theirs. The Stoics trained for that space. They rehearsed insults. They imagined worst-case scenarios not to become negative, but to be unshakable. Knew that in a world full of noise and conflict, the rarest skill is emotional sovereignty. Let's be honest, the modern world is designed to trigger you. Scroll through social media, and within 5 seconds, you'll see something that makes your blood boil. Maybe it's a headline. Maybe it's someone humble bragging about their perfect life. Maybe it's a comment that feels like a jab at everything you stand for. But here's the truth. You are not required to react to everything that pokes you. Not a puppet. You're not someone else's emotional punching bag. You are the master of your inner world. And when you realize that, truly deeply realize it, to stop giving free rent in your head to people who don't even know who they are. Let's say someone leaves a passive-aggressive comment on your post. You can feel it, bubbling, the urge to respond, defend, prove them wrong. But then you stop. You remember, why am I handing them the keys to my peace? That's emotional JIU-JITSU.U. Let the energy flow through, but you don't absorb it. You deflect, you observe, you move on. And in doing so, you remain untouchable. Not because you're emotionless, but because your emotions are yours, not public property. This is what the Stoics practiced every single day. Not being stone cold, but being fireproof, not immune to pain, but immune to manipulation. They didn't isolate themselves from the world, they simply refused to be ruled by it. So the next time someone tries to drag you into their chaos, remember this. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Walk away with dignity. Let them wonder why they couldn't shake you. Let your silence speak volumes. Because the strongest man in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who could react but doesn't. There's a moment in Elon Musk's life that few people talk about, but it says everything about his emotional resilience. It was 2008. SpaceX had just failed its third rocket launch. Tesla was on the brink of bankruptcy. His personal life was unraveling. He was going through a public divorce. The media had started calling him a fraud. Investors were pulling out. Friends warned him to step away, sell the companies, protect what little was left. But Musk didn't flinch. At a time when most people would have crumbled under pressure, he said something remarkable to a small group of engineers who were still willing to work on the fourth Falcon 1 rocket. He said, "We're not stopping. I don't care if I'm the last one standing. I'll sleep on the floor. I'll go broke. But we are launching that rocket, not in anger, not in panic," he said. It with calm, razor-sharp clarity. And that's what Stoicism looks like in real time. Emotional sovereignty doesn't mean you never feel fear or pain. It means you don't let those emotions own you. Musk didn't react with desperation. He responded with direction. He took all that noise, critics, chaos, internal doubted, and turned it into quiet, focused energy. And guess what? On September 28, 2008, the fourth launch succeeded. It was the first privately built liquid-fueled rocket to reach orbit. NASA noticed. The $1.6 billion contract followed. If Musk had reacted emotionally, lashed out at the media, blamed his team, or quit when things got messy, none of it would have happened. This is the same principle you can apply. No matter who you are or what you're facing, you may not be building rockets, but maybe you're dealing with someone who doubts you, or a workplace that drains you, or a family member who constantly tries to provoke you. They want your reaction, but you give them nothing. Stay grounded. You respond with intention, not impulse. And that's how you win, not just in business, but in life. Because the world belongs to those who stay calm under fire. Now, let's turn our attention to a concept that's often misunderstood: emotional detachment. People often confuse it with being cold, aloof, or uncaring. But in Stoicism, emotional detachment isn't about turning into a stone. It's about knowing the difference between what deserves your emotional investment and what doesn't. Imagine this. You're in a meeting. A colleague interrupts you rudely, clearly trying to provoke a reaction. Most people would get flustered, angry, or defensive, but the Stoic remains unmoved, and not out of arrogance, but clarity. He knows, this man's behavior is not within my control, but my response is. That calm silence? It isn't weakness. It's the result of training the mind to remain grounded, regardless of who tries to shake it. And here's something few people realize. The more you protect your inner peace, the more powerful your presence becomes. In a world addicted to drama, Peace is intimidating. Silence. It makes people listen harder. Calmness. It makes people rethink their noise. Let me give you another real-life example. During a press interview, a journalist tried to bait Warren Buffett by bringing up past criticisms and rumors. Most billionaires would have snapped back or walked off. Buffett just chuckled and said, "I'm not in the business of defending nonsense." That one sentence. It silenced the room because that's what unshakable.com does. It flips the dynamic. Instead of being pulled into their storm, you anchor them in your stillness. Let's talk about the hidden power of reframing, a tool the Stoics used constantly. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most famous Stoic emperor, once wrote, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't be." What did he mean? He wasn't suggesting that harm doesn't exist. He was saying, the meaning we assign to events is often more painful than the events themselves. A harsh comment doesn't hurt. Our interpretation of that comment, that we're being disrespected, rejected, or humiliated, that's where the pain takes root. So here's a simple but powerful practice. When something stressful happens, pause. Then ask, what else could this mean? Let me show you how this works. You send a message to a friend. Hours pass. No reply. Your mind begins its usual story. They're ignoring me. They don't care. Maybe I did something wrong. But what if you reframed it? What if you said, they might be busy, they could be struggling, or maybe it has nothing to do with me at all. This small shift changes everything. Instead of spiraling into resentment, you return to peace. You stay calm, you stay rational, you stay powerful. And here's the thing, calmness isn't just about peace. It's a strategy. People who lose control easily are easy to manipulate, but the person who can reframe, who can pause and choose a wiser response, that's the person who cannot be controlled. Just think about it. In arguments, the loudest person often seems dominant, but it's the calm one who actually holds the reins. They're not reacting, they're calculating, they're not defensive, they're deliberate, and that makes them dangerous in the best way. There's a reason why calm people are often the most respected in any room. It's not because they never feel anger or stress. It's because they've learned how to manage their energy, how to direct it wisely. Let me tell you a story about LeBron James. Yes, not a Stoic philosopher, but someone who embodies a Stoic mindset in high-pressure situations. In 2018, during Game 1 of the NBA Finals, his teammate J.R. Smith made a critical error in the last few seconds of the game. They were tied. LeBron had carried the team with a 51-point performance, but Smith, thinking they were ahead, dribbled out the clock instead of taking a game-winning shot. You could see it in LeBron's eyes, pure disbelief, frustration, shock. He sat on the bench, hands on his head, emotionally stunned. But what happened next was more important. He didn't yell. He didn't throw blame. He gathered himself. He returned to the game and kept playing. Even in one of the most intense emotional moments of his career, he chose poise over chaos. That's mental fortitude. The Stoics would call this proheres, ability to choose your response even when everything around you is falling apart. And it's not just athletes or emperors who need this skill. You need it in traffic, at work, in arguments with people you love, when life disappoints you, when the timing feels unfair, when someone betrays your trust. Those are the moments where your power is tested. Anyone can stay calm when things are easy, but calmness under fire, that's earned. That's practiced, and that's where your true character shines. So remember this, the calmest person in the room is often the one who has already been through the fire and learned how not to get burned again. There's something powerful about knowing you don't have to respond. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every conflict needs your participation. And not every test requires a reaction. This is where inner economy becomes your greatest wealth. Imagine your attention as a currency. Every time you argue, explain, or react, you spend it. But when you stay calm, stay focused, and stay silent, you save it. You invest it in things that truly matter. Your peace, your progress, your principles. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." There is never a need to turn things upside down, inside out because of what someone else has done or said. That's not weakness. That's restraint. That's the discipline of stillness. People will test you because they want to pull you into their chaos. They want to rob you of your peace, so they feel justified in losing theirs. They want to provoke you so they don't have to face their own immaturity. But when you respond with stillness, they're left alone with only themselves to wrestle with. And here's the truth. The more you practice this kind of strength, the more powerful you become. Because your calm becomes unsettling to those who feed on conflict. Your silence becomes louder than their screams. Your refusal to be moved becomes a mirror, reflecting their own instability. So let them talk, let them provoke, let them twist the narrative. You've trained too long, endured too much, and grown too far to be shaken by people still at war with themselves. Stay grounded, stay sharp, stay still. The storm will pass, but your clarity, that's what remains. Let me tell you a story. In ancient Rome, there was a Stoic philosopher named Epictetus. He was born a slave, lived under brutal conditions, and walked with a limp for the rest of his life, because a master once twisted his leg during punishment, and yet when asked how he remained so calm despite such hardship, he replied, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." One day a young man came to Epictetus, frustrated by how others treated him. He said, "They insult me, test me, speak down to me as if I were nothing." Epictetus looked at him and said, "If someone handed you a pile of dung and said, 'Here, this is gold,' would you accept it?" The young man laughed. "Of course not." "Then why," Epictetus asked, "do you accept their insults as truth? Why do you treat their opinion as gold?" That is the essence of Stoic calm. You do not let other people's chaos become your identity. You learn to step back and watch, not absorb. You hear the insult, but you do not internalize it. You feel the anger rise, but you don't let it steer the wheel. This is not about being emotionless. It's about being masterful with your emotions. You don't drown in your feelings. You channel them. You turn frustration into focus. You turn pain into patience. You turn triggers into teachers, because in the end, your strength isn't shown in how loud you shout back. It's shown in how clearly you choose not to. That is the quiet revolution of Stoicism. One breath, one pause, one moment of clarity at a time. Imagine you're walking through a forest. A storm breaks out, the wind howls, trees shake, leaves whip across your face. Now picture two people in that storm. One runs panicking, cursing the sky, trying to control the uncontrollable. The other stops, breathes, and finds shelter beneath the roots of an old tree. That same storm, different response. That's what Stoicism teaches us. You don't control the wind, but you do control your sails. When the world tests your calm, you have a choice. Will you be the person chasing after every gust of emotion, or the one who anchors themselves and rides it out? Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Most of the chaos we feel isn't from what's actually happening, it's from our interpretation of what's happening. It's not their words that hurt, it's the meaning we assign to them. And here's the most empowering truth. You can change that meaning. You can rewrite the narrative. When someone calls you weak, you can smile, not because you believe them, but because you've realized their insult is a mirror reflecting their fear, not your truth. When someone tries to provoke you, you can stay silent, not because you're defeated, but because you've already won the battle within. That inner stillness, that's your true power. And the world, as loud as it may be, cannot touch it unless you hand it over. So next time you feel your peace slipping away, ask yourself, am I reacting ... or am I responding? One is impulse, the other is mastery, and mastery is built in the quietest of moments when nobody sees, nobody claps, and nobody knows. But you do. There's a story about Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor who ruled not just an empire, but also his emotions. One morning, a servant rushed in and told him that a senator had been insulting him behind his back. Most rulers would have reacted with rage, punishment, or at least public defense. But Marcus, he paused, he listened. Then he said calmly, "If he truly knew me, he would have said much worse." That is the power of inner freedom. He didn't feel the need to correct the gossip. He didn't allow someone else's words to dictate his mood, because he knew something vital. No one can steal your peace unless you let them. Think about it. We spend so much energy trying to defend ourselves against every judgment, every insult, every misinterpretation. But in doing so, we hand over the most precious thing we have. Our attention, our focus, our sense of who we are. True calm is not passive. It's not weak. It's the highest form of strength because it says, I know myself so well, I no longer need to explain. You become like a mountain. The wind may scream, the rain may pour, but the mountain does not move. And here's the secret. People will respect you more when you stop needing their validation. They'll test your silence at first. They'll poke, provoke, even mock. But eventually, they'll realize you are unmoved. You are grounded. You are free. And nothing unsettles the chaotic more than a soul at peace. So how do we train ourselves to become that unmoving mountain? To stay calm not just once, but every single time life throws a storm our way. The Stoics had a practice, simple, but profound. Premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It sounds grim at first, but it's not about pessimism. It's about preparation, mental clarity. Imagine what could go wrong, not to dwell in fear, but to sharpen your resilience before life even strikes. Let's say you have an important meeting tomorrow. A Stoic would pause the night before and calmly think, what if they criticize my ideas? What if the presentation fails? What if no one listens? But instead of panicking, they'd ask, what would I do? How would I respond? Can I still stay grounded? This is not anxiety. This is inner rehearsal. Like a warrior practicing in the quiet before battle, Seneca wrote. He robs present ills of their power, who has perceived their coming beforehand. You don't get shocked when the worst happens because you've already seen it, felt it, prepared for it. That's how you build mental armor. But here's what's even more powerful. When you do this often enough, you start to realize that most things aren't worth reacting to in the first place. Someone insults you. You expected it. They ignore you. You already imagined that. Your day falls apart. You trained for chaos. Now nothing surprises you. And when you can't be surprised, you can't be shaken. This is how calm becomes your default. Not a mask, not a forced smile, but a quiet, powerful confidence, rooted in forethought and self-mastery. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about choosing your response, instead of being yanked around by the world. Like a puppet, stillness becomes your superpower. But staying calm isn't just about enduring hardship. It's about transforming how you interpret reality itself. Let me explain. Most people live reactively. Something happens and they immediately judge it. This is bad. This is unfair. This shouldn't have happened to me. And that judgment triggers the emotion. Anger, anxiety, resentment. But the Stoics taught us something radical. It's not events that disturb us. It's our opinion of them. That's Epictetus. The insult isn't what hurts you. Your belief that you must be respected. That's what stings. The delay in traffic isn't what ruins your day. It's the expectation that things should always go your way. Once you grasp this, something incredible happens. You realize you can rewrite the meaning of every moment. Not to sugarcoat it, but to reclaim your power over it. Let's say someone betrays your trust. Most people spiral into bitterness, but a Stoic pauses and reframes. This is a reminder of why I should place my peace in things I can control, not in other people's behavior. Or let's say you fail publicly. The crowd laughs. You feel ashamed. But then the Stoic within you speaks. This is a training ground, a chance to strengthen my humility and resilience. This is mental alchemy, turning emotional poison into fuel. It doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. It means you don't let temporary emotions define your story. Instead, you return to what you can control. Your breath, your thoughts, your actions, your values. The world will always try to hijack your attention, to bait you into drama, to pull you into chaos. But when you've trained yourself to pause, to reframe, to return to what matters, you become dangerous in the best way. Because now, nothing can make you lose your center. And that is the true Stoic victory. So how do you actually build this kind of inner strength? Not by reading quotes, not by pretending to be calm when you're secretly boiling inside, but by practicing over and over again in the real world. The Stoics didn't just write philosophy, they lived it. They trained for adversity the way warriors train for battle. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, woke up every day and reminded himself, today, I will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. He expected it, not as negativity, but as mental preparation. Why? Because when you expect the world to test you, you stop being surprised. And when you're not surprised, you're not shaken. You're ready. Seneca went even further. He practiced what he called voluntary discomfort, sleeping on the floor, eating plain food, wearing rough clothing, just to remind himself, if this is the worst that could happen, then I have nothing to fear. It sounds extreme, but there's a deeper purpose. Every time you voluntarily step into discomfort, you weaken the grip fear has over your life. Think about it. If you've already practiced rejection, then someone ignoring you doesn't crush your spirit. If you've trained yourself to be okay with being misunderstood, then someone gossiping about you won't ruin your peace. The Stoic doesn't seek pain, but they don't run from it either. They walk toward, challenge, eyes open, heart steady, not because they enjoy suffering, but because they know the obstacle is the path. Growth doesn't happen when everything is smooth. It happens when you're stretched, squeezed, tested. That's why the Stoic sees every difficulty not as punishment, but as a forge, a place where character is shaped. So next time life throws you into the fire, don't ask, why me? Ask instead, what is this trying to teach me? When you ask, what is this trying to teach me? Something shifts. You move from victim to student, from resistance to acceptance, from chaos to clarity. This is the true power of Stoicism. It doesn't promise a life without problems. It promises a way to face those problems without losing yourself. Let's go back to Marcus Aurelius for a moment. He didn't write meditations to impress anyone. He wrote it for himself, a private journal, filled with reminders to stay grounded. He was the most powerful man in the world yet. He constantly reminded himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. Why would an emperor think about death? Because the Stoics believed that remembering mortality sharpens the way you live. When you know life is short, you stop wasting time on petty arguments. You stop overreacting to insults. You stop chasing approval from people who don't even understand you. You focus instead on what matters. Character, courage, compassion, clarity. That's why Stoic strength isn't loud. It's not about yelling or dominating others. It's silent, composed, rooted deep within. It's the calm in the storm, the stillness in the noise. The person who doesn't flinch, even when everything around them is falling apart. And here's the truth. You already have that strength inside you. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to remember who you are, without the noise, without the fear. And the best way to remember is to practice. Start small. Let someone cut in line without reacting. Choose silence over defensiveness. Take a breath before answering criticism. Spend 5 minutes each morning preparing your mind like a warrior sharpens his sword. It won't happen overnight, but over time, you'll notice the things that used to shake you no longer move you, not because the world changed, but because you did. Real power isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself, especially when everything in you wants to lose control. Think about it. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can react with anger, slam a door, fire back a clever insult. That takes no strength, only impulse. But to stay calm, to choose your response when your emotions scream for revenge, that's real power. That's where Stoicism lives, not in the heat of emotion, but in the pause before the response. There's a story about Epictetus, the former slave who became one of the greatest Stoic teachers. A student once asked him, "What should I do when someone insults me?" Epictetus replied, "Remember, they are not insulting you, only their idea of you. And that idea is not yours to carry." What a shift in perspective. Instead of taking offense, the Stoic sees, this is not about me, it's about their judgment, their story, not my reality. And when you no longer carry other people's judgments, you become free. Free to walk away. Free to hold your silence. Free to smile, even when misunderstood. Not out of weakness, but because you've risen above the need to explain yourself. This isn't passivity. This is precision, because the Stoic doesn't avoid confrontation. They simply choose the battles that matter. They don't react because they've trained their mind to stay still, to observe, like a hawk above the noise, instead of getting pulled into the storm. This doesn't mean you suppress your feelings. It means you honor your emotions, but you don't obey them blindly. That's a discipline. That's a form of inner excellence, and you cultivate it every time you resist the urge to react, every time you choose stillness over drama, every time you say less and become more. When you stop reacting, something remarkable happens. People no longer know how to control you. They try the usual tactics, insults, guilt, manipulation, but you remain steady. You become unreadable, unshakable. Then in that silence, you reclaim your energy. You stop bleeding power into pointless arguments. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop performing for approval you don't need. That's when you become truly dangerous, because no one can bait you, and no one can break you. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So what if they mock you for being calm? Let them. So what if they say, "You're too quiet, too emotionless, too withdrawn. Let them. Their discomfort with your silence is not your burden to carry. Let them fill the air with noise. You remain still. Let them seek validation from every room. You remain centered. This is the warrior's mindset, disguised as quiet. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be seen, because the most powerful people don't announce their strength. They carry it in how they pause before speaking, in how they leave a room instead of escalating, in how they protect their peace like a sacred fire. This silence is not emptiness. It's presence. It's awareness sharpened like a blade. It's the wisdom to see. Not everything needs your reaction. Not everyone deserves your energy. When you realize this, truly realize it, you stop chasing control of the world, and start mastering the only battlefield that matters, yourself. Here's the truth. No one tells you. The moment you stop reacting, you stop being predictable. And when you're no longer predictable, you become powerful in a way that no one can calculate, because most people aren't thinking. They're just reacting. They're running scripts. Push this button. They explode. Say this word. They shut down. Give them praise. They glow. Take it away. They crumble. But you interrupt that loop. You step out of the game. You become a mirror, still calm, and impossible to manipulate. And that's when people start to fear you, not because you're aggressive, but because they can't figure out how to move you. You no longer flinch at criticism. You no longer chase praise. You no longer over-explain or seek to correct every false narrative. You let people think what they want. You let them misunderstand, and you sleep just fine. Because your peace is no longer tied to their approval. Your energy is no longer spent fixing perceptions. You've realized their opinion is not your responsibility. Your response is. Seneca once said, if a person knows not to which port they sail, no wind is favorable. When you stop reacting, you start steering. You start choosing your direction, instead of being tossed by every wave of emotion, every storm of someone else's chaos. You become the captain not of the world, but of your soul. That's the kind of control no one can take from you. Here's what happens when you choose silence. You start hearing more, not just the noise outside, but the quiet truths within. You begin to recognize the difference between urgency and importance, between reaction and wisdom. Most people live in urgency. They rush to reply, to defend, to attack. As if their words were weapons they must constantly draw. But the Stoic knows, not every battle is worth fighting. Not every comment needs an answer. Not every insult requires defense. In fact, silence is often the sharpest response. It shows you're not controlled by your ego, or by theirs. There's a story about a monk insulted by a warrior. The monk simply smiled and walked away. The warrior shouted, "Coward." The monk turned and replied, "If someone offers you a gift, and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" That is the essence of Stoic strength, refusing to receive what does not serve you. When someone throws their anger at you, you don't catch it. When they provoke you, you don't dance. You stay still, not because you're weak, but because you are anchored. And in that stillness, you gain something rare, clarity. The clarity to know when to speak, and more importantly, when not to, because silence isn't the absence of response, it's the presence of control. True power isn't loud. It doesn't need to scream to be felt. In fact, the more silent it is, the more unstoppable it becomes. You don't need to correct every lie. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't need to set the record straight in every room that misjudges you. Because when you know who you are, you no longer need validation from those who don't. Silence is not retreat. It's resistance. It's the refusal to give away your peace for cheap attention. It's the ultimate act of self-respect to say, not every energy deserves mine. Seneca wrote, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. And part of that learning is mastering when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. Sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all, not because you're afraid, but because you've seen the game for what it is. You've outgrown it, and you're no longer interested in playing roles that shrink your spirit just to prove your strength. Let your silence speak. For you, let it echo louder than words ever could. Because those who understand won't need an explanation, and those who demand one won't believe it anyway. You see, in a world that keeps trying to shake you, the rarest and most powerful thing you can do is stay rooted. When people test you, when pressure builds, you have two choices: react like everyone else, or respond like no one else. The Stoics didn't suppress their emotions, they mastered them. They didn't avoid difficulty, They walked into it with composure, and that's your invitation. Let the chaos swirl outside, but within, build your inner citadel, because when everyone else is yelling, your silence becomes a roar. When the world gets loud, your calm presence becomes magnetic. When people try to pull you out of character, let your stillness be your protest. Not every battle needs your sword. Some are won by simply refusing to be disturbed. So breathe, stay grounded, and keep your peace sacred, because the calmest person in the room is usually the one in control. If this message spoke to something deep within you, if it reminded you that strength doesn't always look loud, then this is just the beginning of your journey. There's more wisdom waiting for you. More stories that teach you to stand tall, even when the world wants you to kneel. So if you found even a moment of stillness here, consider subscribing to Stoic Scrolls. We're building a space for thinkers, for seekers, for those who choose discipline over drama, and presence over reaction. And if you're ready to go deeper, watch the next video right here. It might be the reminder you didn't know you needed today. Until then, stay calm, stay grounded, and remember, sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all.